I am interested in the relationship between oil painting and technology. Um, I think that this has been a preoccupation, especially over the last 3 or 4 years, because the arena in the world tech has changed so rapidly and is continuing to change every single day. And we've all heard of um, programs like ChatGTP and large language models, and companies like Google and OpenAI and Anthropic and so on. And they're all developing these huge data centers, and they're full of this scaling of data. So there's a kind of a race on, and then caught up in this whole race is the arts and culture. If one looks into the history of art, that people have always, I think that artists have always been pressed naturally to engage with the new sciences or the new technologies that were developing around their times. So it's a natural thing. It's not like a choice or a process that I've kind of adopted. It's more that if I suppose it's something that you can't really avoid. And because of that, if you have an openness about it, you're going to question it, and it's going to be challenging, of course, because I'm versed a great deal in the well-known methods of painting, which are traditional oil painting methods. And when these are crossed with the new technology, it becomes a rather wonderful and potentially beautiful thing. You see, if you use a language model like ChatGTP to write literature, it will have a certain voice. It has its own specific style of writing. And in a similar way, if you were to use a corporate language model, which was not open sourced, you'd have not a great deal of control over the style. So artistically, it's not so interesting for an artist to discover their own way using this route. And the way around this is to use low-rank adaptation models, which are called LoRAs, which is when you train the model yourself, you basically fine-tune it. And that might take years. The models of which I base some of these works that are surrounding me at the moment that I've been crafting, because I do see AI as a craft. It's a node-based system. It's fairly complex. And the models that I've been crafting have been developed on the terms of, I would say, 2 to 3 years of developing just one LoRa and refining it over and over again with iterations, meaning that just having or accessing this technology does not make art. The artist still has the same problem of creating and having the responsibility of developing their own styles. Just as you would find in the Renaissance of an artist like Andre Mantegna or Leonardo da Vinci was able to use the tools of perspective, it didn't suddenly make them an artist. They were naturally having to use this perspective in psychological ways, or sometimes even subject it to paradoxical ways of painting that didn't entirely suit the perspective. I feel I can give you a kind of a free association chain of thoughts that I've been having regarding the show. There's a lot of accoutrements, fashion, pearls, necklaces, chains, animals, furniture, empty rooms, shadows. And what all of this, I suppose, comes to in the end is a kind of psychological interior space. The rooms are often in corners. The characters are both empowered. They're often women that are empowered with low horizon lines. They're not passive, they're active. They're authoritative even. The objects in the exhibition, and often in my paintings as a whole, I'm careful to see them not necessarily in a Freudian sense or a subconscious sense, although they can be perceived in this way, like a cat, a dark cat beneath a chair casting a shadow might be or could be conceived as the inner workings or subconscious of the person or a parallel psychology to the person. They're certainly not necessarily cat-like. They're quite anthropomorphic. They have almost human-like sort of stares, awareness. But I'm also interested in the space in between things. So it's not as simple as it just being a train or a shrieking whistle that comes from blowing a steam whistle. It doesn't matter which era the objects come from. They could be a contemporary jet or a bird cage. What's important to me is this frame of reference that they give shouldn't be too fixed. So they're not symbols. They don't have a fixed meaning. If you look at paintings, for example, by Goya, you could have a child with a bird cage and there'd be a cat staring at the bird. Now there's a narrative, it's a clear narrative, but really the painting isn't about that. I don't think that Goya's subject or his intention was for that I'm going to do a painting and try and understand the true nature of a bird being stalked by a savage cat. Because there are uncanny elements in the work that are clearly there to balance out or enhance the overall psychological intensity of the painting. And why artists do this is quite mysterious. I feel that the themes in my painting, whether they be wooden toy trains or birds or pearls or shadows even, all of these really are subject to the architecture and foundation of style. And the AI, even however much you manifest the AI with and trying to control it with your lauras and your styles, there is an original checkpoint, which is the foundation model that will essentially hallucinate. And there's an element of hallucination within your control too, where you become acquainted with the images. And becoming acquainted with these images is a little like discovering something or finding something, much like Athena's just simply being born. And so the artist is forced into a position of the observer and the finder, or even the creator. And this is where the collaboration begins between the artist and the machine. The idea of the creator or the author of the image has been highly problematic, and it's been discussed a great deal, of course, by Adorno and Roland Barthes and Derrida, and it's a huge question. This idea of centralized self, or no person being an island, and the influences that make up a person's aesthetic decisions and what free will means. So I would prefer to sort of imagine that we ourselves are much like the machine. We often surprise ourselves. We don't really truly understand or have a full picture, a noumenal picture of everything from the beginning, and never could. However, the AI enables us or gives us the illusion that we can see something that is surprisingly immediate and perfected in its birth, as I said, much like Athena. A simple example of this is one that Leonardo da Vinci often mentions. When you look into clouds or the embers of the fire, you can see battle scenes or strange and interesting compositions. This pareidolia, or this kind of emergence of meaning, has been very popular in the 1920s with artists like Jean Dubuffet and even at points Picasso and Giacometti, where they engaged with this idea of finding rather than willing. And it goes all the way back to the strongest artists of Altamira and Lascaux. So the notion is that you haven't actually created what the final image is. You found it, and it's this process of finding that is very close also to the identity of self. As your way of finding something is dependent upon who you are, and I suppose, if you like, what kind of algorithm that you are made of as a human being. For example, what I find or decide is going to be beautiful is going to be entirely different from someone else. And this is This is where you come back to the paradox of self.